Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Let's give it to the difference makers.
makers. Hello, I want to welcome you to Time for a Difference. This is a weekly podcast for difference making people using difference making truths to impact the lives of people around us. So today we're going to talk about a very important subject. The subject is confrontation, and we're going to talk about its importance to the difference making economy.
Now, to do that, I want to give you a very important confrontation I had. The first question that we wanted to start with this week is to give you a picture like, how did I find myself on this difference making journey? It came by a confrontation. And so it's very strange to think that our second show would be about confrontation, but I think by the end of the show, you're going to see the power of it and the beauty of it. So it's a very important confrontation I had with myself and from God that brought this great heart change in me to become a difference maker. Now, because of time, I can't get into all of the backstory. And really, I want to just say this about backstory. Your backstory to even being here and hearing this and what journey this is going to bring. I hope I bring a piece of that journey that God's bringing you on. There's always large backstories of what God does in our heart to position us, to bring us to some dissatisfaction or just some level of, I want to bring change in this world and some fire in you. And so I'm not going to get into my backstory today. I'll talk about it in the future. So I want you to do this, though, today, because I want to put you in my confrontation moment. I want you just to imagine that on 10 in the morning, I'm on the streets of a new community that I really didn't know. And I was trying to decide, what am I doing out here? And so I came up with a Christian thing and I said, well, I'm out here prayer walking. That's what I'll be doing today. So I was already talking away from my idea of mission, and I really didn't know what it was going to be. And I want to say that's okay not to know. And I was nervous. So what did I do? I do what all of us do. I gave me one of those little Christian cheer things that we give ourselves and said, well, all I have to do is show to please God. So I've done that part really well. Now that's really funny because I had already shown, and I don't know why that was inside my mind, but thankfully I found something out about God's heart in this whole thing. And I'll reflect on that a little bit more later, and I think you'll see it. Thankfully, God was more eager for me to be a difference maker and have the right heart that He changed my life that morning by the second person I met. See, I saw a woman I later found out to be Leanne, and I saw her wobbling and leaning against a car smoking a cigarette, and I could just tell she was really messed up. And so as I was approaching her and got closer to her, I became nervous. As you are, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, I began to look for a reason not to approach her. And thoughts were flying through my head like, it's inappropriate for this strange man to approach this woman. Another thought that I had is, what can I do to help her? She's so messed up. Occupied with those thoughts, I was about to pass her. Then suddenly she did something that just woke me up. She did a face plant. So right when I was going to pass her, she falls flat on her face. And then I said, what do I do? And I did what most nervous people do. I kept on walking another 100 feet. And that 100 feet was very important because that's when God started his confrontation with me. And he brought to my mind, I don't know how God does this. He just plants these thoughts, but brought to my mind a story I had been reading just recently and really focusing on, which was the story of the Good Samaritan. And the picture of the religious people walking around this broken guy. Jesus is bringing this definition of who this neighbor was the guy, the Samaritan, who went to this broken person and helped him. We talked about that last week. We did that for this purpose today. So suddenly God also put a thought inside my hair that said my hair. So inside my head, it scared me. And he says, if you keep walking, you better keep on walking and never do this thing again. Now, I'm not sure what that meant, but I knew in my heart that my heart brought me out here, and I knew that God needed me to do something about it. So I needed to go back and I needed to talk to that Leanne. But what do you say? Well, please never get hooked by that question. Here is the right question. This is tip number one in approaching people. Ask the better question is, what would Jesus say? Focus on that before you go out and do that. What would Jesus say to the people I meet? We get so encumbered and connected to ourselves that we really forget what we're out there for, is to bring a representation of him. So what did I say? So I asked the lady, Leanne, I said, if she was having a hard day. And that was kind of the obvious thing to ask, right? And she said yes. And I asked her if I could pray for her. And we use that. That's such a go-to thing of the Christians, but we usually don't mean it. But I meant it. Because that's all I could think of doing with her. And folks, here's what happened. This is a life-changing moment. This is God's confrontation. Leanne was my teacher that day. God was using her as my teacher. She looked at me with the most empty eyes, desperate eyes, and she said these words, I will take anything. From that 5-second exchange, it changed everything about my life. I saw for the first time the eyes of emptiness and desperation, eyes that I now see in many people's faces that I pass every day. From the impact of her emptiness, I saw something new that was birthed inside my heart. After 24 years of being a pastor, something new, a great capacity to really pray for her came from my heart. We're going to talk a little bit about that capacity later. But just some compassion rose up inside of me. And I just prayed the heart of Christ all over her. It was all over her. His heart for her was much stronger than my heart for her. Confrontation complete. God won, I won, and I believe Leanne won.
Lots of other people won too that heard your story.
Yeah. Do you know that confrontation is always this? It's about everyone wins. That's what confrontation is about. God confronted my fears and my religiousness, and he brought me a teacher, Leanne, to show me how to be a difference maker. And guess what? Today, you could win off a story like this. And that's what my prayer is. That's why we're really in for the difference makers.
That's a beautiful story. And so today we're going to talk about that loving confrontation. So loving confrontation, it's one of the most valuable skills that we must master in the difference-making economy. So today we're going to talk about these confrontation truths.
More often than not, people's brokenness is caused by this slow erosion of core values and beliefs from bad situations. In other words, people don't intentionally put themselves in bad situations. I'm going to grow up and be a robber. I'm going to grow up and be a drug addict. Nobody starts out with that. It's usually they go through life and they work through experiences, and their core values and beliefs in them begin to erode away.
And you can establish a difference-making influence with people by bold action in a bad situation. And David gave you an example of that with his situation with Leanne. She was in a bad situation. He made a bold action, and it had a great impact.
Yeah, notice that bold action, approaching a stranger, bold action. You can establish difference-making influence of people by having a confrontation with words about two things. First, speak the truth about the situation as God sees it. I want to say this, confrontation is usually, I have to confront them. No, confront the situation. When people see the situation and it doesn't take it personal, they'll listen to the truth of what you have to say. Second thing that you speak about is I want to say these words, speak prophetic, powerful, merciful, grace, hope-filled, faith-filled words to people. And tell them the amazing thing that their life could become if they allowed God to change their heart. Speak those into people's lives. How the situation can be completely different if they allow God to change their life.
So today we're going to study these truths from a story of Jesus, and it's found in Luke 19:45 through 48. So when Jesus entered the temple courts, he began to drive out those who were selling. "It is written," he said to them, "my house shall be a house of prayer, but you've made it a den of robbers." So every day he was teaching at the temple, but the chief priests and the teachers of the law and the leaders among the people were trying to kill him. Yet they could not find any way to do it, because all the people hung on his words.
As you can see in this story, Jesus is dealing with the hearts of the people in the temple toward God. This is what's happening. Jesus wasn't singling anybody out. He's speaking to the crowd, the people that are there. And so what's the condition of the temple? He says it's a den of thieves. But when most people read this story and they just get caught on that, he's just rebuking and he's whipping, he's taking a whip out and turning over those tables.
It's a tough Jesus.
He's a tough, angry Jesus. And so when we confront, we need to be the same way. But no, watch this. He tells us what the temple should or could be. It could be a house of prayer.
So David kind of mentioned it a little earlier, but how do people's lives go from a house of prayer to a house of dens? So I believe real life pains and problems.
Den of thieves.
Or den of thieves. What did I say?
You said den, like a bear den.
Okay, sorry about that. I believe that real life pains and situations, problems, they slowly erode away core values and beliefs until someday, one day, we find ourselves being what we never wanted to be. Like David said, kids don't dream about being a robber or, somebody who lies. They want to be heroes and they want to be somebody really special. But life situations erode at us till we get to that point.
Yeah, that's why confrontation should never be about exposing sins and mistakes. There shouldn't be any agenda when you confront people. The difference-making economy, again, is about bringing difference to people. And people a lot of times know about their struggle. So bringing it out and shaming it isn't a great goal. People get Jesus' motives wrong from this story. His goal was not to be angry and show off how religious he was and to shame the people back to doing the right things. Man, if you're thinking that way, you miss the story. Because what Jesus is about is to get their hearts to make it a house of prayer again. Isn't that what God wanted there? He wanted their shame. No, he wanted them all to make it a house of prayer again. And because he said those words, the people hung upon him and the teaching that precedes that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Go ahead, Joy.
So what caused the erosion in the people's hearts? Well, the dispersed Jews from all over the world, they would come to Jerusalem to worship God by bringing animal sacrifices from long distances. And it was kind of risky, carrying around your sheep and your goats and your money. And so when they would come to the temple, they started to set up places where they could exchange foreign money and they could purchase. And so initially it started as a benefit to the people, to help the people that were coming into Jerusalem.
Yeah, the selling of sacrifice in exchange of money was a good thing at the beginning. It helped the worshipers. Trying to take a sheep or some bull a long journey because you lived out in a different country, it just didn't make sense. So there was a good intention there. But over time, what happened? The good thing started making money at it. Then it began to do what? It began to attract, listen carefully, it began to attract dishonest motives in the people. And so there's dishonest motives are the things that Jesus addressed when he said, you've made it this a den of thieves or den of robbers.
Well, this example is often the situation with people. So as we said, very few people choose to live dishonest or careless. It's often situations that drive them to that point. They make some wrong choices. They get stuck in a certain lifestyle. And that it just comes from real life problems and some wrong choices that they have made.
So how do we as difference makers correct this thing? It's by confrontation. Confrontation. Jesus was a confronter, but unto a goal. I want to say that again. Jesus was a confronter, but unto the goal of a change of heart. That's what he's always after. Most people know when you're in confrontation, you know when a confrontation is right, when somebody says something right to you. That you'll know that when it happens. So when you confront people, you can expect that that's going to be the response, that they're going to not like being confronted and bring that open. And so sometimes they're going to blow up at you. Now, we see this example of this at the end of the story. Even those in the temple who were commanded that day to find something to kill Jesus with from what he said. And him going over there and going into the sacred place of the temple and overturning tables and whipping people out. That seemed like that's all the thing that they needed to be able to go and drag him out and kill him. But they couldn't. Why? And this is what I want you to hear. The power of confrontation is because they hung on his words. What he said was the temple, that was the truth. And they hung on that. And that's what we want confrontation to do. We want people's hearts to hang onto that truth of what you said. And so they hung on the truth of it, and they hung on the hope of what he said. He said, this is what it is. It's a den of thieves. Here's what God wants it to be, a place of prayer. And they were hung on it. They said, inside they're saying, that's what I want. I can't kill this guy for saying the truth. This is the worst time to try to go out and kill Jesus. And that's why when they were confronted by the religious leaders that said, let's find something to get him on, that they said, this is the worst time to be able to catch him on it, because their hearts were hung on that. And you want people, when you're in a confrontation, to not personalize it so that they miss the thing that you're after, which is that what is right? What is the best situation for you? What could this situation be? What is the truth of the situation now, and what could the situation be?
So every person can establish difference-making influence with people by 3 practices of godly confrontation from this story. So we're going to go through those 3.
First, every person can establish a difference-making influence by confronting with a correcting action. Jesus drove out those who were selling, whipping and turning over tables. That's a pretty strong thing that got everybody's attention about what his heart was about. He was inflamed about something. And so it caught their attention. I can't tell you this, folks, just like when I approached Leanne that day, how impacting it is to send in a confrontation message what strong and clear love actions to people. I can't tell you how powerful it is when you make it a love action towards them.
Mm-hmm. So second, every person can establish difference-making influence with 2 confrontations with words. So here we go, words of truth. So Jesus said, you have made my house a den of robbers. And then number 2 is words of restoration. This could be a house of prayer. So they're married together, the confrontation, the words of truth, and the words of restoration. We need to present both to people.
Yeah, what it could be. I want to say that. I want to emphasize that. What it could be. Confrontation has truth, and then it paints a picture of what could be. It's a den of thieves now. It could be a house of prayer. In honesty, confrontation rarely works at the beginning. But don't ever underestimate how much God will hang people on your words. Let that happen. Never just go, oh, they're so angry. This is the worst thing I ever could have done. No, let them hang on your words. If it's love, you've prayed about it, and the intent is to make their life situation better. So if you make the life situation better, they're going to have to make their heart change to make that happen. But if they see that the situation is that there's a problem there and it's been confronted, and then you tell them what this could be, that gives them some direction. That gives them some picture to why I must change behaviors, or why I must really get on this thing in my life and bring it before God and let God bring some change to me. Gracious and merciful and full of faith. The faith is a very important thing. for the thing that's wrong. The truth about what something could be is inspirational and powerful. It hangs on people. Let God work upon people's hearts. I believe that confrontation with the truth and what could be is one of the most important ways to begin a difference-making journey with people. With Leanne and my experience with her, I walked away and I said, man, what I just learned from this experience, that there are real issues out there. And if I'm willing to pray and if I'm willing to pour out Christ's heart to them, that this can begin a journey with me. And it did. And over the years, I did groups and groups and groups of people, and a church was birthed out of it, of people that came with me that followed that very simple formula, the one that I use today that works in different communities. That was a harder community. Now I'm working in a more wealthier community with people. The same thing. People that are empty need Jesus, need the difference maker in their life. So let's wrap this up today, okay? Whether you want to believe it or not, a confrontation is an important skill to learn as a difference maker. Jesus teaches us that both our actions and our words have to agree with our confrontation message. That our words should reflect the truth of the situation, not the judgment of a person's heart. Our words also must give people a picture of what their life could be if they gave their heart completely over to God. Lastly, never look for instant heart change. Leave people the room to be hung on Christ's heart for them. That could be story. Be faithful to remind them of what they could be. Not for you, not for your benefit. See, these principles can be used on anybody, on your mate, on your job, on your any life situation, but you can't do it out of the heart for your benefit, even though it may benefit you. But because of this reason, because that person is loved by God.
So we want to give you a big thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And if you would like this podcast, would you please consider joining our community and hit the subscribe tab. You can also find us on Facebook, and we would love to hear from you.
If you have the heart to be part of our difference-making outreach in our community that we're now currently working in, please consider a donation at Buy Us a Coffee link below it. That's a way that you could support us in our mission of reaching the people community that we're at now. We're just new in there. We've connected with about 114 people. And if it's upon your heart to donate to that, we would just so appreciate it.
So I want to say thank you again for coming to our show today. And we like to always end our shows with a challenge. So here's our challenge for the week. Find somebody who you may be struggling and plant a could be message of encouragement from God to them. And I wanted to just say a little bit on the end here too. In my devotions the other day, I had a message about the disciples when they found out that Jesus had been risen. Mary came running. They said, Jesus isn't there, he's risen. And some of the disciples, it said in the scripture, they thought that the women were speaking nonsense. But Peter ran to the tomb. So I wanted to encourage you today. This may seem like a simple thing to do. It may not make sense to you, but our challenge to you today is to go out like Peter and run out and try it. And you're going to find amazing things are going to happen when you give people that could be message. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.